Hey, and welcome back to the Strained Hammy Podcast. We're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Mark.
Welcome to the Strained Hammy Podcast. It is April 8th, 2013. My name is Mark.
I'm Rex.
And I'm Travis.
Today we're going to talk about the Rangers' good start to the season. We're going to ask if Monte Kiffin will be enough to fix the turnover problem. And we'll ask which local team is the closest and furthest away from a title. Alright, so the Rangers are off to a pretty good start, 4-2 after their first two series. A little disappointing that they dropped that first game in the opening night to the Disastros, but...
Yeah, Matt Harrison.
Yeah.
Two losses on the season, both to Matt Harrison.
Yes, we're going to be talking good, bad, and ugly, and Matt Harrison is definitely in the bad category so far. I wouldn't go so far as to call him ugly. We've got a special person reserved for that spot. Starting with the good, for me, I think even though his batting average hasn't quite reflected it yet, I think Elvis Andrus has been an asset to the team so far and coming out of the second spot in the lineup. He had, like I said, his average isn't reflecting it, but he's hitting the ball really well, and his base running skills have been legit.
He's hit a lot of hard line drive outs, which you hate to see an out, but that's a great way to do it because eventually those are going to start finding gaps, and that's what you want out of your two slot, your number two hitter. So I agree completely. He's hitting the ball hard. His average doesn't reflect it, but it'll turn around later in the year, and eventually, as it averages out.
I think him and Beltre so far this year have kind of become the core of the team again. And I think those two guys are most the Rangers' identity. And great defensive players, solid offensive players, and being good on the base pass. And I feel like they're getting back to those things, and it could lead them to be even more successful than maybe we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, that's another great point about the start of the season is they've been getting back to being more aggressive on the bases. They're taking the extra base. I think even A.J. Pierzynski got a triple that I was cringing when I was watching it at the ballpark, but he made it. And it's real early, so it's you don't want to make too big assumptions on the beginning of the season.
But 6 games, yeah.
Right, but Gary Pettis over at third base has been aggressive at sending runners, especially in the Angels series. Mike Trout has, all the tools in the world but his arm, and they definitely exploited that. And we watched Josh Hamilton enough to know that he doesn't have the most accurate arm, and they took advantage of that. So that'll be something to watch. But their base running has definitely gotten back to what it was in 2010 and even in 2011.
Let's touch on the pitching staff real quick because obviously when you are 4-2 out of the gate, you're winning games, you're putting up more runs than the other team. But on the flip side, the pitching staff has been incredible, and I think we all thought they were going to be pretty solid. But aside from Matt Harrison's 2 starts, I think every other game's been a quality start. The bullpen relief has been really good. Joe Nathan's been top notch. I think he has 3 shutout innings, 1 save.
Tanner Sheppers has been.
So
Harrison's first start was a quality start, though, wasn't it?
No, he gave up 6.
Oh, okay.
He got credited with 6, but I think the last 3 minutes, 2 of them. Anyways, long story short, he gave up 6 runs, so no, not a quality start. There were some inherited runners that scored. Yeah. But aside from that, he's still eating up innings. It's not like he's getting pulled in the second inning. So I don't think you can be totally devastated with it. Pitchers are going to have bad outings. And, you don't want to see that from one of your top rotation guys. But he's still he's pitched 5 and 6 innings each game. So you can't be totally disheartened by it. But the pitching staff has been great, and I think the lineup has just been good. But I think the pitching staff's been great. Yeah. And I think that was something that I didn't really expect. I thought they'd be good, but not great.
Yeah, Gondo fast out of the gate.
Yep.
Too.
Yep.
Another good start tonight.
Yep. Yeah, he had a little bit of, it seems like everybody's had a little bit of control issues early, but especially Darvish was able to really battle through that and the blister problem that he had. On a night where all of the aces in baseball were having just terrible nights, Darvish looked like he was going to, match that, but then he was able to pull through and get the win. Ogando tonight, from what I saw, he looked all over the place at times, but the Rays only had 2 hits on him when I stopped watching. So, he was effectively wild, if anything.
And that's kind of been his MO. He's had some accuracy issues, but it's never been where it hurts them. Mm-hmm. He's got such good stuff. I think he's only got about 3 really good pitches, and maybe he can throw a 4th one in there, but 3 really good pitches. He throws them all very effectively, but doesn't mean he controls them all very well.
Yeah,
it isn't bad if you don't have a lot of pitches. Like, at least make them a little afraid of it. Right?
Yep, absolutely. And when you're throwing 98 miles an hour, that's a pretty good thing to be afraid of an inside pitch.
Yeah. The interesting thing I saw tonight, though, was his fastball was only hovering around 90, 91, but he was pitching backwards a lot. He was starting with curveballs, throwing more off speed than his fastball, which I thought was really, really interesting. It'll be interesting to see if he continues that throughout the year.
Maybe if he may have toned it down with being a starter versus a reliever. I know Neftali Feliz's fastball came down about 5 miles an hour when he took the starter
95.
So. Still pretty fast, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So,
but on the other end of the spectrum, in the not so good column, I would. Initially, it was Mitch Moreland and Leonis Martin. Mitch has sort of broken out tonight. He was 3 for 3 tonight when we started the podcast, so it's good to see him breaking out. He's had 2 home runs now, but he was off to a really, really slow start. He was kind of the opposite of the engine of the offense. I can't think of an adjective, but he was really killing it. Him and Leonis were just putting a damper on things whenever we get down to them. Leonis. They both had pretty good at-bats, working the counts.
Well, and I think Mitch Moreland gets a bad rep. And I know he's had a bad start or slow start, but we are only 6 games into it. And if you look at his full season last year, he was injured for a good chunk. I think he missed about 6 to 8 weeks. And he still put up a .267 batting average with 15 home runs. Now, that's not starting first baseman numbers, but... and we talked about it before, when you have a lineup of 6-7 guys that can get you near 20 home runs, not many lineups can do that. And if Mitch Moreland's one of those guys that gets you 20 home runs and he hits 270, you'll take it.
Yeah, I think too, it's kind of a little bit off topic, but I'm just happy overall that they've kind of gotten away from all of the bad they had at the end of last season, which was, I was scared that they were going to start really, really slow this year. So I'm happy that's not happened. But I do worry just because they don't have 2 big guys in the middle of their lineup. So that still's a long-term worry for me. Do they have enough power with this lineup? Even with the running the bases better and creating, kind of small ball runs.
I think Beltre and Berkman are pretty solid. Berkman's not going to get you 40, but... he may push 30, and Beltre will probably get you 30.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about guys that have to be respected in the middle.
Yeah, Bergman's playing really well, and he's had great at-bats, but he didn't stay healthy at all last year, so I'm still really nervous about that.
Yeah, they're not playing him in the field as much, so I think him staying on as a DH, he does. The dude runs hard, so that anytime he sprints in his big Puma ways.
The double he got the other day, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, he scored from first tonight in the Tampa Bay game, and it was just hilarious.
Anytime a big guy runs that hard, he's risking injury.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be kind of more of a runs by committee thing rather than relying on let's just come out and say it, Josh Hamilton to hit you 43 home runs or whatever he had last year.
Well, and that's another part of the bad for me is the lineup in general has been pretty solid, but the outfield has been, aside from Murphy, I think Cruz has come on of late, but another slow start. Defensively, he's not that good. We haven't got a lot of production out of center field aside from defense, and I think that's probably the weakest part of their team right now. Pitching's great, infield and catcher is solid. Outfield is hit or miss.
Yeah. You see Justin Upton making a start like he is with Atlanta, and you just kind of dream.
Yeah. Well, Nelly's been really bad, or Nelson Cruz has been really bad defensively, but I think he's hitting like 500 right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's hitting good. But he actually had the first 2 games weren't very good. Yeah. But after that, I mean, obviously we're only 6 games into it.
Yeah.
But he certainly has picked up his pace.
But he's looked like, to me, he looks like he's going to need to be a DH in like 2 years. He's just, defensively, I don't know if he's getting slower or if he's just not interested.
He's never been very good at making good reads on angles on the ball and breaking on the ball. He does have a little bit of a deceptive speed, so he makes up for some of his poor reads.
Yeah, made a fantastic catch today.
Yeah. I didn't see that one.
See, that's the thing. I feel like he's capable of a lot. He just doesn't.
Yeah, it was like Game 6 flashbacks, except more positive results.
Except he caught it.
Yeah. But sorry, I stepped over your.
Oh no, that's that was kind of my point. Was that he makes some plays like that make you think he's got it in him, but he really is. He just doesn't make very good reads all the time, and I think it goes overlooked because sometimes a ball will get past him and it'll look like it's just a tough ball to get to, but he made it tough to get to.
Yeah. See, that's how I feel. That's kind of why he fits in my negative or in my bad in the outfield, because I feel like over the course of the season he's going to cost you runs
or a World Series.
And thousands or tens of people are tuning out right now. They reference Game 6 twice.
Can't take it anymore.
No. Speaking of Game 6, we had a World Series contributor return over the weekend as well. Josh Hamilton came back. The Bloopers were out. And he took pride in that he was a contributor to a baseball town because our baseball spirit was so much higher in their hatred for him. And I know Mark went to a World Series game as well, and I got a chance to go to a game over the weekend. I don't know if you went to one, so you can relate. The noise during the World Series, 1,000,000 times louder than his boos. Yeah, he says the boos were louder.
Yeah, no, the boos definitely weren't. I would say that the first strikeout of the series,
cheering,
that was very close to being the loudest cheer that I ever heard at the ballpark. I'm not agreeing with him, but it was dang close.
Well, and the other part with the World Series is it was first pitch to last pitch.
Yeah,
it was loud the entire time.
Yeah.
Where
you could tell this was a regular season game.
Yeah, it was only loud when Josh Hamilton struck out, when he got announced,
when he touched the ball.
Yeah, so those are different. It's not the same kind of loud. Playoff environment's loud.
It's just
it was just
spots.
Yeah.
So to his point, and I'm not going to argue this is not a football town. The Cowboys have been the top dog for a long time, but I think the sports fan in Dallas respects the quality of sports teams that we have, and they cheer for the Mavericks, and they cheer for the Rangers and the Stars and FC Dallas, and I think we get a bad, when the team's good rep, but I think there are good fans out there, and I think to say it's not a baseball town is a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, and baseball towns just aren't baseball towns from birth. Like, something's got to spark a city to become a baseball town.
Yeah, like if you win 27 World Series.
Yeah, you might be a baseball town. At some point in there, you became
That's another point in terms of baseball teams. The Rangers have been around since
1972.
The Yankees, the Red Sox, the White Sox, the Cubbies, the Mets, they've all been around since the 1800s, 1880s, or whenever baseball started, I don't know. But the Rangers haven't been around that long. No. So
they're building a fan base, and they got their first, real taste of real success, and so the fan base expanded. So
it's only natural.
That's what sports is, man. It's and to me, New York is a business town. LA is an entertainment town. If you look at the number one thing, so if there's a baseball fan base, a large baseball fan base that supports the team, then it's a baseball town.
Yeah. And there's 45,000 people a night buying tickets.
Even on high school football Fridays, Josh.
It's a baseball town.
Yep.
It might be a football town too, but it's a baseball town.
Yeah. It was reported in the stands, and it was found out to be false that he might have done a little wanking motion towards the fans. He says he didn't do it, but just be assured, Josh, that we're all doing it to you. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Monte Kiffin and if he can get the Cowboys' turnovers up.
Welcome back to the Strained Hammy Podcast. Monte Kiffin is the new defensive coordinator for your Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys for the last several years have had a problem creating turnovers. We're a bad interception team and not a great fumble team. So is Monte Kiffin, in his history of creating turnovers with his Tampa 2, enough to turn around this Cowboys defense and change their turnover differential?
I think that he will certainly help. I think a big part of turnovers, at least in the secondary, is having people in the right position to make plays. So I think you'll definitely see the interceptions go up from a scheme point. I don't know if they have enough of the right guys to actually make the plays on the ball. For it to be a huge increase. I would be pleasantly surprised if we could get one interception a game. I don't think that's going to happen. So 16, they had 7 last year, you're talking about 16. And I think that probably puts you somewhere in the middle of the pack in the NFL. I don't think that's going to happen because they don't have the players. I think Mo Claiborne and Brandon Carr are good ball-seeking guys. But that's about it. Who else they got that's going to go pick off some passes? Sean Lee puts himself in the right spot a lot of times, but you can't have your middle linebacker being your leading interception. I think the Tampa 2 actually hurts him because he becomes a middle linebacker instead of one of two inside guys. So I think it takes away his coverage range a little bit. But I could be totally wrong on that. But I think the scheme helps in the long run. I just don't know if it helps enough because they don't have enough of the playmakers that actually will go get the ball. Only from an interception point, I think fumble recoveries or forced fumbles should go back up. I think they were down mostly because DeMarcus Ware was hurt last year. I think for the most part their forced fumbles is okay. You can live with it.
I think that you're talking about guys being able to seek out the ball and whatnot. I think the change to the 4-3 and having DeMarcus Ware rushing more often than not than he was in the 3-4, I think that's going to create more situations where the ball is just there's some more opportunistic interceptions, and I think that aspect of the turnovers will increase. I'm excited about Monte Kiffin coming in his 4-3. I think it does put more guys in the right positions as far as using them most effectively. And I've heard so often that the free safety position is one of the most important in the 4-3. So I think that's going to be a big aspect of this season and the turnovers.
Yeah, just starting out talking personnel. I think the 4-3 and the Tampa 2 makes their personnel better. I think if you look over the last couple of years, with Ryan's defense, you had solid defense, and a lot of times busted coverage. And there was always talk about, well, we didn't know what we were supposed to do there. There's too many adjustments. Good thing about the Tampa 2 is it's basically, first and second down were this, third down were this. And run it, and you make the plays. Now, it's obviously more complicated than that, but it's definitely less convoluted than
Rob Ryan's
defense. So I think that's going to help a lot. I also think for their personnel, like you were talking about Sean Lee, the middle linebacker in that Tampa 2 is a deep cover guy. He immediately drops into a deep zone. So I think he could actually see an increase in interception numbers. I think he may be less effective against the run. So I think that's why that weak side linebacker collects a lot of tackles in the 4-3 because he's got less pass responsibilities than Sean Lee would have. I think the other thing, Brandon Carr, both of his interceptions last year came out of a zone instead of the press.
So that'll help him out.
Yeah.
Or him and Mo Claiborne.
Him and Claiborne. I think both of those guys are really good press corners. But I think it's hard to be a high interception press corner one-on-one, especially with marginal safety help over the top.
Well, in press coverage, the easier play is not to intercept it, it's to bat it down. Yeah. So you'll see a good press corner will have higher passes deflected than interceptions. And I don't know if you saw that as much last year just because, like you said, they didn't really have safety help. And so when they were doing in press coverage, it didn't take much for them to be just enough out of position where a good quarterback can find a hole.
Well, and I think that's my deal with these two corners. I think everybody's like, well, it doesn't help you to have two elite corners if you're in a Tampa 2. It always helps you to have two elite corners.
Especially in a passing league.
Yeah, that's a silly argument. So I think those guys will have more opportunity to get the ball in their hands. And I think both of them have shown the ability to turn turnovers into touchdowns. Claiborne did it on a fumble recovery. Carr made two big plays with two significant returns. So I think if we can get more turnovers in those guys' hands, the better we are off. Safety is a huge issue, and I know both of you guys brought that up. But I had some quick numbers I wanted to go over on Kiffin. I'm omitting his Vikings coordinator year in 1991 because it was his first year as a coordinator. It was actually before Dungy came to Minnesota and before the implement of the Tampa 2. So these are all his stops under his defense.
Okay.
That he'll be running here. In Tampa Bay in 95, before he got there he got there in 96, they had 28 forced fumbles and interceptions total. They were 12th in the league in scoring defense, allowed 335 points. 96, and people will wonder if he has an improvement, is it because of Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp? They were both on both teams.
Okay.
In 96, they had 35 combined forced fumbles and interceptions, so that's +7, with the only difference really being Kiffin. And they were 8th in points. They only allowed 293. So jump in points allowed and in turnovers. With the Saints, he was there just in 1995, so only 1 year. The year before, they allowed 407 points, which is insane.
Wow.
But not that insane when I tell you the Cowboys number. They're second, 407 points, 27th in the league. They had 32 forced fumbles and interceptions combined. In 95, when Kiffin got there, they allowed 348 points. That's over 50 less points to get to 18th in the league. They had 36 combined interceptions and forced fumbles. That's +4. With, once again, really the only change being they didn't get a Hall of Famer. They got Monte Kiffin. So it's not like they got Dion in the draft that year. And then since most of his career was in Tampa, we got to kind of go to college now. And people have roasted Kiffin a little bit on his college career. In 2008, before Lane and Monte Kiffin got to the University of Tennessee, they had 23 total forced fumbles and interceptions. In 2009, 28 forced fumbles and interceptions. It's a +5. And at USC in 2009, who was the coach at USC in 2009?
Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll. And so that's a pretty solid defensive coach and a Monte Kiffin guy. So they're running kind of the same scheme on defense. 18 forced fumbles, 11 interceptions, so 29 total. And in 2010, with the sanctions and with having to deal with his son being the head coach of the team, he also had 29. So
it's two less games, too. Because they don't get the championship game and the playoff game.
Yeah. And
bowl game.
Yeah, and they were in the sanctions, so they didn't have new talent either. So there was no freshman sensations on that team. Just the guys that were already there, minus the guys that had left.
Sure.
which was a lot of guys because they didn't want to stay and play for Lane Kiffin. So I think Monte Kiffin, his pedigree shows, and this is something that Rob Ryan's pedigree did not show when he got hired. Rob Ryan had some solid defenses, but he was never a high turnover defensive guy, and he never was really he had one really good year in Cleveland, but his Raiders defenses were never great. None of his defenses were ever great. Kiffin's had great defenses, has had high turnover defenses, and that's without even discussing the work of Marinelli, who is his defensive line coach, whose Chicago Bears defense had 42 turnovers, or 44 turnovers last year.
So you're talking about these increases. You mentioned 4, plus 5, plus 7.
Yeah.
And I think that would put the Cowboys somewhere in the low 20s, if that was the case, in total forced fumbles and interceptions. And
yeah.
I think although that would be a good improvement, it still doesn't put them where you need them to be. And the reason I say that is because they're such a low starting point to begin with.
Yeah.
Getting into 2021 range is not going to be considered a middle pack or top tier defense. You said, I think Tampa Bay had 23 and they were 18th in the league.
Yeah.
So
that's his first year, though. They improved significantly the second year as well.
That was the year before, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So the improvement still puts them at a middle of the pack team. And not that I'm saying it's bad, because obviously they need that kind of improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge part of the defense is getting the ball back to the offense. And, Rob Ryan's whole thing was forcing punts. He always talked about his defense's forced punts, which... you'd have to look up the stats, but it's probably debatable how effective they were at that. Monte Kiffin, on the other hand, is, I don't care about punts. I'm going to take the ball from you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he cares about punts, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So
you want to do both,
right? And I like that. If I could see a plus 5 change in the first year, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah.
It's in the right direction, and I think you could definitely pin that on the scheme easily.
So. Here's my question to both of you. We talked about that Saints team that improved from 407 points to 350 points allowed. Mm-hmm. Rob Ryan's defense last year allowed 400 points over the course of the season, which is insane to me. It drives me like the Dallas Cowboys don't give up 400 points in a year. Even when they're 5-11, I think they gave up like 320 something points because their defense was okay. That's more what I'm interested in. Allow 50 less points, get 5 or 6 more turnovers, and your offense that's had you competitive for the last 2 years at 8-8 with a pretty close to garbage defense, at least points wise. And that's all we did last year was praise the defense and say they were playing well. They gave up a lot of points.
Well, and 50 points, to put it in perspective, is 3 points per game.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a field goal in your favor.
And how many games did you win last year if you have that 3 points per game in your back pocket?
Well, they certainly win that Ravens game.
Yeah.
And there's certainly, I think Dan Bailey hit 5 game-tying or go-ahead field goals within the last 2 minutes of the game at the end of or all of last season.
So those game-tying field goals become game-winning field goals.
Right. Or, maybe he only hits 3, but they're all game winners.
Yeah.
Instead of, and he doesn't have to go out there to kick another field goal because they just run out the clock.
Yeah.
So, certainly 3 points is huge in football games. I mean,
point spreads are
go to Vegas.
4.
3 points. 3 points is huge.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a huge swing. 50-point improvement, 5 turnovers. I'm in.
Yeah, and so I'm not saying that the presence of a 72-year-old man and his best little buddy are gonna change the Cowboys from what was essentially a really bad defense last year. We can give all the excuses we want in the world about injuries or whatever, but the last half of the year they were wretched. Mm-hmm. And so he's not going to turn them from that into an elite level defense like Chicago was last year, who carried their offense. But we don't need him to. No. This offense can score points with the best offenses in football. So if we get that 50 points back this year and we get 5 or 6 more opportunities for our offense, we could be talking about 10-6 instead of 8-8. And 10-6 from 8-8 is a world of difference. You're in the playoffs, you got a chance to do something. And then if you're a Monte Kiffin defense and you're opportunistic, you can get hot going into the playoffs, like say that Saints team was, where they're not an elite level defense, but they're getting turnovers and giving their offense a chance to score. So if you get a high defense and an offense that can play, you got a team that can win a Super Bowl. Whether they're the best team in the league or not, doesn't matter the last 7 years.
Yeah, we've seen teams get
out. So I think the difference between Monte Kiffin and Rob Ryan is Monte Kiffin gives you a chance to be legitimately competitive with the highest level teams with your offense.
I like it. Let's, if we can see those improvements, they seem small when you're just talking numbers, but to your point, giving the offense a chance, it makes a big difference in the win-loss column, and that's the stat that's the most important. And if Kiffin can improve that, I'm totally on board with that. So, does that mean that the Cowboys are going to be the next closest team to win a title? I think we'll find out next. Back on Strained Hammy Podcast, final segment coming up here, and I got a few numbers for you guys, and I'm going to let you guess what they are. 2011, 1999, 1996. The numbers that go with that: 1 plus 1, 2, 1 plus 1, 5 plus 3. Name those numbers.
Usher #1 hits in Europe.
That is close. The actual numbers are championships or championship wins and or championship appearances, and those are the most recent ones. So the Mavs had an appearance in 2011 where they won, and then an appearance in 2006 was lost. The Rangers had back-to-back appearances in 2010 and 2011. The Stars had an appearance in 99, which they won, and an appearance in 2001, which they lost. And then the Cowboys have 8 total appearances, 5 wins, 3 losses, and 96 is the most recent one, which was a win. So, it's been good since 96 or since the early 90s if you're a Dallas sports fan. There's been some championship opportunities. Rangers still looking for their first one, but they've got 2 appearances recently, and the Mavs have shown some consistency recently, and the Stars are, as we've discussed in previous weeks, they're rebuilding and they're on the upswing. So, who's next to go back? Who's next to win? And who's the longest shot?
I think the next team that will be in a championship in Dallas-Fort Worth is the Hoops, FC Dallas. But nobody cares. So
when was their last championship?
Their last appearance was 2010. But nobody cared because the Mavericks were playing well.
Yeah. And they lost to...
Colorado, right?
Yeah, Colorado.
Yep, Colorado. And, it was...
That dang bald guy.
Casey had a goal, and then Kai Kamara had like an accidental own goal off somebody. I was in the stadium, FC Dallas Stadium for that, not the championship site.
We were there together.
We were there together.
Drowned our
because I love you. But nobody cares about FC Dallas except
so they're a good contender right now.
But
aside from FC Dallas,
they're leading the West and no one knows. But as far as real
big four, soccer's a sport. Let's just stick with the big four.
As far as real sports, according to the Dallas sports fan, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the Dallas Cowboys will be the next team in a championship.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah, I know it seems like a long shot, and it's definitely wishful thinking, but they have elite players at some of the most important positions on the field. And I think that they've been contending for so long that at some point they've got to catch all the breaks.
They gotta be like the Giants. You get in at 9-7, but you catch fire.
Yeah, I'm hoping a little better than 9-7. But if they don't do it in the next 3 years, then they could definitely be the farthest away because it could be 20. Yeah, because 3-4 years you have no more DeMarcus, you have no more Romo, you have no more Witten. Tyron Smith will still be here, but that's a lot of elite to lose all at once. Mm-hmm. And so you may not be able to rebuild that for a long time. So just because I don't want to doom myself as a Cowboy fan for the next 20 years, I predict them to go to the championship before any other team.
I think the Rangers are probably my team that I would pick to win a championship before anyone else. I can see your point about the Cowboys, but I do think 3 years.
Oblivion.
Yeah. I'm not as optimistic, I guess, or hopeful. But I think the Rangers are the most well-constructed team in the Metroplex. Mavericks are kind of in a weird position where they're rebuilding, retooling. I don't see them getting back, especially with the way that the West is right now. I don't see them getting back to the finals anytime soon. And then the Stars are definitely in a rebuild. And, in hockey, anything can really happen, but it's just not. I don't see it happening for the Stars. So,
well, I kind of agree with Mark a little bit more. The Rangers are the best constructed team. They have one of the best minor league teams organizations, so they are set up for future success more than any other Dallas team. They have, on top of that, they have a good team in the bigs. So they're poised for playoff runs year after year, as is. Plus, with all the minor league guys and young future talent, they're just set up for the most consistent run going forward. And having that consistent shot gives you a chance to get back to the World Series. And they've been twice in recent years, and you just got to win one. I agree, Mavs are certainly in an odd rebuilding position right now, and it kind of depends on can they land anybody to build around or to help complement Dirk for 3 to 4 years. And
then they're in the Cowboys situation too, where you basically had 2 years to do it, or 3 years to do it, or look, Dirk's not going to be an elite player in 4 years, no matter what Mark Cuban says. So you've got two.
They've got a window, and they can get there.
They've got 2 to 3 years to do it, much like the Cowboys do, or it's back to the cellar and let's restart this thing all over again.
And then the Stars are rebuilding, and I think they've accumulated some nice young talent. To me, hockey is kind of a crapshoot, though. I mean, the Lightning won it as an 8th seed a couple years ago, and nobody saw them going into winning a road series against the number 1 seed, and then going on and then taking the title. So the Stanley Cup is probably the most mysterious one to me because. They say once you get in the tournament, you got a chance, and it may be more true in hockey than any other sport. So if they get in, maybe the Stars have a chance to win it all, but they're still young, and I think they have potential to get there. But I still would say the Rangers number 1. I would actually put the Stars second, then the Cowboys, then the Mavs. I think the Cowboys have the tools. I just don't know if they have their front office just drives me nuts sometimes, and it's Jerry. I mean, I like what he's done as an owner, but we have this argument back all day. As a GM, he just does not have what it takes, in my opinion, and that's going to hurt them for a long time.
No, and I agree with that, and like I said, probably a lot of mine on the Cowboys is just hope because I refuse to give up, but I'm every other time we talk about the Cowboys for the rest of eternity, if we talk about how they build their team, it'll be negative for me. And I do agree with you on the Rangers. I think they are good. My thing with kind of how I order this is, like you said, I think hockey's kind of a crapshoot. I think you got to change. Like if they got in the playoffs this year, I'd say if Kari Lehtonen just didn't allow any goals,
certainly
they'd have a chance.
Got a chance.
Yeah, I couldn't guarantee they'd win because they might not be able to score any either. But they'd have a chance. But I think baseball's really hard to win a championship in.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the hardest sport to win a championship I think it and it and basketball are right next to each other. If you're not the Lakers or the Yankees, it's really hard to win a championship.
That's a really good point because I've always thought baseball was the hardest because for the longest time only 4 teams got in each league. But basketball has actually had the fewest champions going back to, I want to say, the early 80s. And it was like 6 champions. Bulls, Spurs, Rockets, Lakers, Celtics.
Yeah, there's something about basketball where you kind of have to...
not very many.
You have to have the talent in basketball, but then you also have to have this mental edge that is almost only gained by winning a championship. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the most disappointing thing about the Mavs breaking up their championship team is they had the sustained period of success, and then they finally got over the hump. They finally had that mental edge. Now, whether they had the physical edge going forward or not is a different story, but then they have all new guys who don't have any of that. So I think basketball and baseball are the 2 hardest sports to win a championship, especially your first championship. And so I feel like the Rangers are going to be there every year. I love their team. I love how they're designed. I just think it's really tough to win a World Series.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Nobody knows that more right now than Rangers fans. Yeah. I mean, best team on paper.
Two strikes away.
Yeah.
And Nelson Cruz misplayed ball away. Granted, they didn't. I don't think they really had much of a shot against the Giants. They were kind of there to take it in, but the next year, I mean, I thought surely that was it.
And then in 2012, they had the best team on paper, and they were, everybody saying best team in baseball.
Just fell apart.
Just flatlined.
They stopped playing the last 2 weeks, and look where that got them.
There's a lot of elements that go into it, but
the other part of it is, and this is kind of why I'm more pro Cowboys in this sense, I think football might be the easiest sport to win a championship in. Now you have to win several playoff games.
I think it could be the easiest to have a turnaround season. And not that the Cowboys at 8-8 are in need of a huge turnaround, but for case in point, the NFC South, I want to say, is going on like 9 years straight of the worst team in the division finishing in the top.
Yeah.
And I think Atlanta last year might have broken that up.
They broke because they went 2 years in a row. Yeah.
So, but you're talking about nearly a decade of a new champion, a new division champion each year in
a complete
NFC
churn
South.
of the division. Yeah.
There's been, I want to see each of the last 4 or 5 years a new division champ. Or each of the 4 NFC East teams have won the division in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And probably cyclical before that. So, I mean, in the NFL, to that point, it's easily, in my opinion, the most, well, that's terrible English right now, but the most easy to flip from bottom to top.
But I think even going through the playoffs, in the NFC specifically, because the AFC has had powers and kind of has powers now. The Patriots are going to be good. The Ravens probably, I don't know what the Ravens are going to do next year, but the Broncos are probably going to be back there next year. Like, they've got solid teams, and I think there's more disparity. There's more difference between there's more difference between the top and bottom of the AFC.
Oh, I got you.
Where the NFC is, if you've got a quarterback that can do it, and I think that Romo can do it, you can win the whole thing. And there's nothing like Matt Ryan can win a Super Bowl, Eli Manning can win a Super Bowl, Tony Romo can win a Super Bowl, Drew Brees can win a Super Bowl. Any of those.
If Eli Manning can win a Super Bowl, Brady Quinn can win a Super Bowl.
That is false.
Okay, true. That's false.
They do have the same level of dumb face, but
that's about as comparable.
That's all the comparisons you have between the 2 guys.
Eli is good enough to win Super Bowl.
But that's where I'm getting at. I think mine more has to do with, I feel like every team is competitive in their league. Even the Stars right now are semi-competitive in their league. Now, the Mavericks have the biggest chore because they have to remake their entire roster again next year and hopefully have some sort of plan beyond next year starting this offseason. The Rangers definitely have the most stable, best situation going forward, but they're also in the toughest sport in the toughest league in their sport.
Yeah, the toughest division, too.
Yeah, the toughest division. The Cowboys are in a volatile league in a division that no one ever really breaks out of. So you could win the division at 10-6 without even if you told me the Cowboys were 10-6, I'd tell you they were NFC East champs. And so if you win your conference at 10-6, you get a bye. You got to win 2 games, and then you're in a Super Bowl. So I think they have the easiest road. And while they definitely have holes, so is every Super Bowl champion for the last 10 years. So that's me apologizing, much like Jerry Jones does at the end of the
I get the point.
You almost convinced me.
Yeah, almost. Just almost. But I think the thing that stands out the most to me is who has the clearest future. Mm-hmm. And right now it's the Rangers, and then that's why I said Stars second. Yeah. Because the Mavs, are they going to be able to capitalize on the Dirk window? And the Cowboys, are they going to be able to capitalize on the Witten, Ware, Romo window? Mm. And it's really hard to say. Yeah. But I do totally agree that NFL might be the easiest to have a shot.
Yeah. When we're talking about the Rangers and being well-constructed and talking about their minor league system, we're not even necessarily talking about those players in the minor leagues playing for the Rangers. That's just, they've got such a depth of talent in their minor league system that they can dole out and just trade for top-of-the-line players that can produce now. So I think that's another thing to take into account.
What if they made that move or one of those moves now? Like if they hypothetically pulled off Price or Stanton for Profar. Mm-hmm. As excited as I am about Profar, they would be number 1 on my list. Mm-hmm. That would change that immediately. As silly as that sounds, having another elite player on the major league level would change that. And here's my problem with you putting the Stars at 2, because I have a significant problem with it. The Mavericks at least have Dirk, and so they have an elite player. The Cowboys have several elite players. Now you need several elite players on the NFL level. Like bad teams have an elite player, but the Cowboys have several elite players. Tell me the elite player on the Dallas Stars.
Louis Erickson, Jamie Benn, Kerry
Lettinen.
Those are 3 big stars in big positions.
No, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I feel like
that might be where it drops off. I mean, they don't have a lot of depth.
Maybe that's
and you need
saying the best players on the Stars, but are they elite? I don't.
See, I'm not sure that Jamie Benn is
Kerry
elite.
Lettinen and Louis Erickson are.
Yeah. I think he's really, really, really good. So I'm not trying to take away from him, but I just feel like they have a talent problem right now with the Stars, and they need to get that turned around in a hurry.
Fair enough. Well, either way, I think it's 2 in favor of the Rangers being the next winner, 1 in favor of the Cowboys being the next winner.
And it's almost all hope. Yeah.
And, it may be within our lifetime, it may not be. But stay tuned over the next 50 years to find out.
Stay alive.
Keep hope.
All right, that'll do it for the Strained Hammy Podcast. Make sure to visit strainedhammy.com and follow us on Twitter at Strained Hammy. Thanks for listening.
So, hope you enjoy this podcast of Strained Hammy and the championship debate.
Okay.
Sorry, I dropped the ball around.
No, that's okay.
You said the podcast was